I'm going to give you my perspective on this episode in advance. This is episode 942. We're talking about controlling me. And my perspective right now is that this might be one of the most important discussions you ever hear in your entire life. We're going to talk about perspective, what it means, how it controls you, and we're going to probably give you some ideas on how you can move past it. All that and more. See if I'm right. Hey, that's a big, bold statement. Maybe my perspective is wrong. You decide on today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote provides an opportunity for business owners and leaders to discover what is real for them and to be impacted by what is real for others. That is the Renegade way. Let's get real. We all face challenges and get stuck occasionally and are looking for an antidote. Each weekday, this show dives into a topic that may have you stuck, frustrated, and uncertain. Our goal is to share our value in an effort to help you find that one thing, the antidote to your challenges, so that you can get results and make more money. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Morning, Tom. I put it out there. I came in with a big, bold statement. We got to live up to it on some level, or we'll have all kinds of people hating on me.
Lots of adjectives in that perspective. Interesting.
I saw that coming.
Interesting. Yes. Well, I think it's a fascinating topic, and I think it'll be an interesting conversation. I think it'll be a conversation. We'll see what other people think about the conversation.
That they are the judge, right? It's their perspective, not ours. I only have one perspective. I might think it's perfect in every way, and someone else might think it's horrible, and everywhere in between.
Thus creating some of the challenge. And why sometimes it's hard to control ourselves, or it's hard to not be controlled by all that we have, and we've been talking about that all week, our knowledge, our experience, and perspective, and how that may be controlling what we do.
So let's talk about perspective. I'm going to give you an example. I can charge an hourly rate for what I do. There are times where people say, really, it's that much? And there are times where people have said, I got to tell you, Bob, I thought it was going to be more. And there are times where someone says, like Goldilocks, it was just right. And I give you those three, really high, really low, and just right, because those are perspectives. And those are the perspectives of the people I'm talking to, different than my perspective. Sometimes I'm really bargain basementing this thing, and it might be the highest rate because I know what's coming, how complicated the project might be, or how difficult the situation might be. Other times I might go, wow, they're overpaying for this, but hey, if they don't know. And we have I think we as humans have a hard time around money because our perspective is influenced by so many things, especially for me, outside factors.
Well, I think it's for everyone.
Those guys are traveling all around the country, all over the world, doing their thing. They're doing something I could do in my sleep. They must be making a whole lot of money because I see pictures of them all over the world. Could very well be the case. It could be that they are just going around the world and doing presentations as they go places, and someone is bankrolling it for them for whatever reason. I don't know. We don't know a lot around perspectives. I only have my perspective, right?
Correct.
You can share with me what your perspective is. Hey, Bob, you know what? I think that pricing, actually, it sounds kind of decent, or just that's one way to look at it. Here's another way to look at it without judging. And I think that's where we struggle, is we get caught in our own perspective.
Well, and our perspective, the words we use when we share our perspective are usually those that can create some limiting beliefs or some judgments because of the words we choose to use. And I think that that's one of our challenges, is that our based on our knowledge and our experience kind of creates our perspective around things. And then our perspective, we have to figure out a way to share what our perspective is, which is usually, and a lot of times, our perspective is a judgment based on what we know and what we've experienced,
or what we expect.
And what we expect is based on.
I can't charge this much money because there's no way any human being could see my value at that level.
And isn't that based on your experience and your knowledge? Because some other people would look at that very differently and be like, because their experience and knowledge is different, their perspective is, wow, that's really not that expensive. I thought it was going to be a whole lot more.
Or my perception of someone else's experience. They can't possibly afford that. Why would they spend that much on this thing?
And in reality, sometimes our perspective does just become a judgment on what we have done or said or been around, or what others are doing or have said.
Right.
Which leads to limiting beliefs, which makes it challenging for us sometimes, I think, to change what's real for us, because our perspective has been influenced by so many things.
Not many people thought the Texas Rangers would win the World Series. That perspective started to change when they rolled over the Orioles, and then they just kept going. And last night, the announcers were like, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. They're going to win. It's just a matter of when. So the perspective of people at the beginning of the season was different than the end of the season. And they lost their first place in their division, the day before the end of the season? And had to play the wild card. They'll never recover from that. So people's perspective was influenced by a lot of factors. No one's ever done that. No one's ever done this. They can't do these things. Yet they did.
And at the same time, there were probably many people within the Texas Rangers organization, fans, and probably some people who study baseball closely, who felt that, of course, they had a chance to win. And they're not surprised that this has happened, because they knew something, perceived something different than the rest of us. And so that's why, because they were just a fan.
Steven's with us. He says, good morning. And then I think talking about the money discussion, that's a difficult conversation. And then he adds, I always say my rates vary on many factors and variables.
Can you put up his previous comment?
That's a difficult conversation.
Here's the challenge.
I kind of glossed over that because I knew where we were going.
So I think what, Stephen, you have just done is you have judged that conversation to be difficult, because that's the word.
And you're not picking on Stephen per se. This is just a good real-time example.
Correct. And if you had just said that's a conversation, you would think about the conversation differently. Because you said it was difficult, you described it as difficult. Now I'm sure that has permeated, and that might be based on your past knowledge and experience. And now that is controlling the way you look at things in the future. Because now you think anytime you're talking about money, when money comes up, my knowledge and experience is said, and now my perspective is that it is difficult conversation. There's other people out there who would say, it's not that difficult. It's just money. It's not a big deal. And because their knowledge and experience is unique. And so I think what we do is take our knowledge and experience, which creates our perspective, and then we have to find a way to share it. And for whatever reason in this world, adjectives are an important part of sharing our perspective, because it helps, because as the definition of an adjective, right? It describes something. And to describe something, that means it has to be a judgment on it. You make a judgment on it. Not judgment in like good, bad, right, wrong, those type of things. Just you have determined that that's the way you're going to describe that conversation, rather than just saying, yeah, it's just another conversation. Like all conversations, they can go in a lot of different directions, and choose the adjective that you want to choose.
And again, Stephen, we're not picking on you. You just gave a really good example. I wanted to jump in with Kelly's comment. The good news is in all this, perceptions can change.
If we allow them to. And again, I'm now, just so Stephen knows it wasn't him, I would say to Kelly, it's the news in all of this. Some people may say it's good. Others might say that's not good. Is that perceptions can change.
Yes.
And I think if we are open to that, then we have the opportunity to allow our perceptions to change. If we aren't, our perception is going to stay what it always is until likely, although I think that's difficult because we are being impacted all the time because we're having new knowledge, we're having new experiences, and so that is influencing what our perspective looks like. And it changes whether we want it to change or not.
Stephen has come back with, I found that most people are very judgmental and they're going to perceive your value based on the price you charge.
That is a perspective, correct. And I would say that it is probably not unique, that there are a lot of people out there who that's the way they think. And I think one of the reasons they think that way is because that's what people tell us, right? Many people are out there saying, well, you have to charge what you're worth. And worth is a lot about perspective. And so if you charge a lot, the belief is, because this is sort of common information, is that the more you charge, the more value you provide. And yet I'm sure there are some other people out there who've been burned and paid a lot and got very little value, and didn't get the value that they thought they were going to get. And so they're skeptical, right? Now their perspective is, if it's too good to be true, it can't be true.
And value, it's hard for me to understand the value. You and I had a discussion before the show about a book you've been contemplating for a number of months. I don't know the value you would place on what we discussed and my contributions to that, because I can't know, one, how it landed fully, because you're still figuring it out. Two, what it could lead to. There might be a day down the road where you go, Bob, you know what, that 5-minute discussion changed how I see this book. And now I was able to write it, boom, boom, boom. It was instrumental. Or it could be, you know what, Bob, that was another stupid thing you said on a Thursday morning. I listened because I'm nice to you. I don't know which. And part of me wants to think it's the second one because that's easy. And that allows me to be limited in my beliefs. And part of me wants to believe the one that's at the other extreme, because then I have a real value to you as a friend. I can't control either of those. And that's probably the complication. I want to get this comment in. Kelly, this is going back a couple minutes. She agrees with you absolutely and said, well said. So
thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it.
I know you don't care about words of affirmation. So secretly what I do is when Kelly says that about you, I just say, she's saying it about me in my head.
I think most people like words of affirmation.
I'm joking. Well, yeah, a little. And that's all your perspective, right?
Correct.
And I think the challenge is we are limited in our perspective. So you talk about the limiting beliefs that can come from adjectives, the limiting beliefs that around our perspective. That's the challenge. When I've had the best results or different results in my life, it's usually been because someone has expanded my perspective. I'm not very good at expanding my perspective myself. I can read books and learn new things, but often it's someone saying, hey, Bob, you know what? You're a real jerk in that situation. Or you saying to me, hey, can I reframe that for you? And we need that. And most of us, to have that with someone, we have to have the relationship where, one, they know us well enough to be able to say that. It's unlikely that the bartender is going to walk up to me and go, hey, Bob, notice that you had a really limiting perspective on your life back about 3 hours ago. Now, if I talk to him for a while or her for a while, and then it becomes can I give you some advice? Because I'm a bartender and they have to have the obligatory towel over their shoulder when they give you advice. Hey, my advice for you is this. That could expand my perspective. But often we don't solicit from people. How many times have you gone into the day and said, boy, I would love, this would be a great day if I get 10 people to expand my perspective. And as leaders, we often try to expand people's perspective in ways that work for us, or at times they don't want it to be expanded.
Yes, which is interesting because I think that we, in some ways, why wouldn't we want it to be expanded? I think the challenge is that we have spent so much that our perspective is built up a lot around the knowledges and experience that we've had. And so it has been ingrained in us for however old we are, since we, could understand knowledge and experience and what the value is of that, even if when we didn't understand it. And so having an impact on it is challenging, especially if we think we have gotten to the point where we have learned all that we could learn.
Sure.
Because then we're like, well, why do I need to even be open to the possibility that something you might say is going to have an impact on me, because I've got all this knowledge and experience. Why do I need any more?
Stephen comes in with an interesting comment. My therapist yesterday said that I can sound like a know-it-all. I'm definitely trying to work on that. And that could be a limiting belief for Stephen, as well as for the people around them, that they're perceiving that about him. And Stephen, trust me, I've been down this road a bit, so I know what that's like. It can be limiting in what people think of how they respond to Stephen. Oh, he knows everything. I don't need to have a discussion with him. He's going to be right. That's the way he is. And I've had people say that to me. I was accused many times of being arrogant. You're really arrogant, which I hate that word.
And a lot of times it depends on who says it to us.
Sure.
I mean, so if you're going to a therapist for whatever reason, you trust and value what they say. So they put that in. That's going to have a much more significant impact on your knowledge and experience, which will then influence your perspective, than someone else saying it, who you value differently.
Right. Yeah. One of the guys who said I was arrogant, I was playing racquetball with him. I had just met him. And 10 minutes in, he's like, you're really arrogant. Didn't really give it much value because we had maybe said 30 words to each other. And it was based on my racquetball play, which really isn't, a defining characteristic of me to many people. Now, if he had been someone who I had spent hours and hours with and really gotten deep and said, hey, Bob, you come off as really arrogant, that would have been a game changer. Excuse me. Right.
Maybe.
I think that. So one of the things I've learned is I need to surround myself with people, and I mean surround, who can provide me different perspectives in situations where I'm oblivious to the fact that something's even going on. So I might say something to a waiter or waitress that lands wrong, and someone with me will be, hey, Bob, I think you're trying to be funny, and they didn't really take it that way. My perspective was I was being funny. They observed that third person going, I don't think it landed that way. I saw their face when they left. They seemed we can't know what we don't know, because I think we're so honestly controlled by our perspectives. It's hard to get out of the box, because how can you know what you don't know?
And if you've had different results doing the same thing, you would be like, oh, everybody's going to, in the past I did this and people thought it was funny. Right. And maybe they even told me it was funny, which is an adjective to describe what just happened. And so you're like, oh, all right. And as a words of affirmation person, self-described, you would be like, wow, funny is a cool thing. I want to be funny. I like that. I like being described as that. And so here's a situation, and you continue to do it. And now you're starting to get, you get different feedback on it. And again, depending on who says it and when they say it and how they say it, could have, again, a significant impact on what your perspective is going forward, and then what you choose to do, how you choose to be real in a moment based on that perspective.
Kelly makes an interesting observation. This is where the value of coaching comes in. It helps you gain new perspectives. And I think that's one of the real things that you and I bring to people, and any coach brings to someone, is just, have you considered
And I
what
think
if?
that one of the things about it is that, again, and I think the value of it, if you value coaching, and if you hire a coach, you value coaching, which means you're open to them sharing possibly some new perspectives or encouraging you to consider them.
Or
And
even
so,
identify them. I had a coach who said to me, I was leading a team and I would say, oh, I said this at the meeting and it didn't really go well. And she'd say, okay, give me 20 other ways you could perceive that sentence. I'd be like, there's only one. She's like, no, give me 20 others. And she'd literally, at a really high rate per hour that thankfully my company was paying, she'd make me come up with 20, literally. All right, that's 4, 16 to go. And what I realized from that exercise, it took about 10 times, was she's like, okay, now we've got the 20. Which one is it? I was like, well, I thought it was the one I had, but now I'm really starting to question, because some of these shadings could be it. And she said, that's the problem you're having. You're saying things and thinking everyone sees it Bob's way, but they're seeing it their way because their perspective is different than yours. And you've got to consider their perspective in what you say more than your own.
Which is a guess at best, usually. We don't know we don't know what goes into what their knowledge and experience is. We might have some understanding of it. The more we know people, we've experienced where I thought I was being the funny person and people
Right.
took it as the arrogant person and told me about it. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe. So I know that person in the room might think this way and this person in the room might think this way, and then we have to figure out, based on all of that, what are our real actions going to be?
Stephen has another comment. That's one of the problems of having multiple bosses too. You get conflicting feedback. That can happen, certainly. And then Kelly says, yes, Bob has helped me with my perspective on my talk. Bob has helped me with my perspective on my talk I'm doing this week. It's so much better now with the help in shifting my perspective. So I talked to Kelly about her presenting, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago.
And what I might
thank
offer,
you for the words
Kelly,
of affirmation. I appreciate that, Kelly.
Can you put that back up for a second?
I may.
I'm going to offer this, Kelly, as just feedback. Take it as you will.
Oh boy.
At the moment, it may seem so much better. Maybe it's just different. Because because there are scenarios out there where you could have done the talk the way that you were going to do it, and people would have found value in it. And we don't know. Now you've changed it so it's different, and you could still give the new talk, and some people may not find as much value in as they found in the other one, because again, they're coming at it with a different perspective. And so, I think this is where adjectives are challenging, right? And our perspective is challenging. The fact that you feel it is so much better is going to give you more confidence to move forward and be able to give that presentation. The challenge is now that your perspective is it's so much better, what happens if it doesn't initially land the way you want it to land to the audience? And someone walks up to you and says, I didn't really find the value in that. Or that was, and I don't think they would say this, but I know Bob has given this as an example. Someone comes up and says, well, that was a waste of my 45 minutes. And now you've gone from, well, I thought this was awesome, to now I'm starting to question. And I think one of the things is just, it's all just feedback. And if we just describe it as feedback and not as good, bad, or indifferent, and we describe things we are doing new are different rather than better or worse, I think we don't get stuck in that land of this is better, so I don't need to make any changes because Bob's a genius and he helped me figure this out.
I like that sentence.
Yeah, I know.
I'm gonna isolate that one, and that's going to be my new slogan. But I would say this about Kelly, in that what we did together was we tried to align what she was presenting more with her objectives. So
Sure.
it's
different.
It's achieving a result that I think is more clear and more direct than it was previously. So whether it's better or worse isn't really the point. To me, the point is, will it achieve the goals that she set for it?
And no one knows.
I think before our discussion, it wasn't real clear in that, okay, these are the steps you're taking in this to achieve this result. Just like this program. When we first did this program, we just talked. Now we have a little more of a point to what we're trying to say, in the sense of we plan the week out. We have a sequence. We talk about the program a little bit beforehand, more and more. And I think the results are different. We stumbled around a lot now. I think now you could isolate the point of each program pretty quickly. I think even the title of each program would give you a really clear point of view.
From your perspective.
From mine, yes.
And again, that's the challenge, right? Is that we all come to this with different perspectives. And so I think.
And Kelly says, I like feedback, so thank you. So she.
And just remember that it's just feedback. Not right, wrong, or perfect. It's just feedback. And I think that becomes some of the challenge, right? Is we have to take all this feedback, which is part of our knowledge and our experience, and then figure out how to take all of that feedback and then determine what is real for us, and then how that is going to change our perspective. And I think that's a task that sometimes creates challenges.
Mm-hmm. Do you have your one thing?
Not yet. Go ahead.
Okay. I think when we talk about our perspective and how it controls us, it's because we tend to believe that our perspective is the only perspective. So until we consider alternative perspectives, we're very limited. And we talk about limiting beliefs. If I think that $100 is a lot of money, if I go to someone and say that's going to cost $100 for me to do this thing for you, that feels like I'm asking for a lot of money. That person might say, $100, I spent that on my bar tab last night. You're far more valuable than my bar tab. I'll go for it. I might say to the same person, hey, that's $5,000. And they go, oh, wow, that's really valuable. He must be really good. And we have so much clouding of our perspectives around money. And really, money is just one of the many variables in any kind of business transaction. Even with donors, when you go to a donor, it's like, we need $20,000 for this thing. I was talking to someone yesterday who was talking about endowing something. And I said, how much are they looking for? And he said a number. And I was like, wow, that in one regard, that's a lot of money. But then it was broken down to a monthly amount. It's like, well, I really believe in this. This is an amount. They did this for me. And the person justified it to me very easily that they had thought through it. And their perspective was, this achieves my goals. And this is the amount of money they need to be able to do what I want them to do on my behalf. And I wasn't thinking that way. I was like, wow, you have that much money to give away? Really? Wow. And what they were saying is, I have that much money to make an investment in something I believe strongly in. Those two perspectives are very different around the same exact thing.
Yes.
How about you?
I think it's, I'm funny. I usually don't struggle to come up with my one thing. There's just a lot in it. There's so much. There's perspective to me is an interesting thing, I guess, is one thing I would say. And talking through it today, I always have shared that what's real for us is our knowledge, experience, and perspective. And what I was starting to come to a little bit today is that our knowledge and our experience creates our perspective. And then our perspective, the way we share our perspective, is what's real for us based on our knowledge and our experience. Because our perspective is really evaluating the knowledge and experience we've had and then figuring out how to share that with others. And doing
and
it
your
in
book just got more complicated.
Well, it's interesting because when I was responding to Kelly's comment, I just started thinking about the value that it had, and was there value in it, or was it me not? Because I think here's what happens, right? She shared that she now thinks her presentation is better. You know, and I come in and say it's different, not necessarily better. And while I think it's valuable to have the belief, because it provides us with confidence, right? She made a judgment, and in some ways that judgment gave her confidence. And in some ways that judgment may also have given her, I hate to even say this, false confidence.
Boy, Kelly, that's on Tom, not me. If it goes south, you call Tom and talk to him about it. I did.
Well, so here's the thing, though. I think about it is I think that confidence is beneficial so that she can feel like she's done everything she could with her knowledge and experience, and even brought in someone else's knowledge and experience. So she believes that what she's going to do, what is real for her that she's going to do, is going to add value. That, I think, is a great thing, is a thing. The challenge will be is when she gets feedback, if she gets feedback that goes against that, not letting, then maybe being okay with that might happen. That not everybody in the moment are going to get the results that you desire. Hopefully, they may learn that in the future.
Kelly's come back with, yikes, the talk is Saturday. I need the confidence. Kelly, call me. You have my number. I'll get you back on the straight and narrow. You'll be fine. Don't listen to Tom. He's just trying to make a point.
No, I'm trying to be helpful. Well, here's the thing I would say is that
that's the first time someone has said yikes on this program. 942
I'm not
episodes.
sure about that. I think there have been other comments that have said yikes. Anyhow, I think the thing is that if your perspective is you're adding value, whether it's the same or different or better or however you would want to define it, if you're adding value, I firmly believe that sharing our value, what's real for us, is important, no matter what feedback we get. Because, as I've said before, the results can change, and we may not even know that they've changed. So that person who might come up and said that wasn't as valuable as I thought it was going to be, may change. Their perspective may change when new knowledge and experience hits them, and they're like, wait, I heard that before. I heard that at a presentation that at one point I thought was not that helpful, and yet now is really valuable. The challenge is you may never not learn that they have changed their perspective on it. And again, I think that one of the things to think about is the fact that you share value. If someone comes up to you and gives you feedback that is not what you expected, doesn't mean you didn't give them value. You caused them to think about it, and one of their thoughts, even though it was a judgment, was it wasn't as valuable as I thought in the moment. That can change. And at the same time, because they determined it wasn't valuable, it added to their experience as something that they either saw value in or didn't, and that caused a change in their perspective. So it had value. They just aren't quite sure yet how that's going to impact what's real for them. That's
Stephen
a roundabout
says, I
way.
think it's really helpful that you guys do this first thing in the morning because it's a great way to start your day.
Thanks.
That's a great perspective, Stephen.
That's a perspective, yes.
I can't.
No, and I think that's the challenge, is that, right? And that's why it's such a weird thing to say, is that adjectives can really help us, and they can hurt us, burden us.
You should write a book on that, Tom. Just a thought.
On adjectives?
Yeah.
The 55 adjectives that provide less value than we think.
There you go. All right, folks. With that, we're going to wrap things up because I'm worried about Kelly's presentation on Saturday now in a way I wasn't until about 5 minutes ago. So, Kelly, it'll be okay. I promise it'll be okay.
Kelly, you have value to share. Share it. And I would say that to anyone. We all have value to share. Share it confidently. Don't worry, or try not to worry about the feedback that you get, because it might be just temporary feedback.
Okay.
The same I would say is, if people walk up and you say, that was the most amazing thing ever, we can get caught up in that too and feel like, well, we never need to change or do anything differently because someone told me that was the most amazing presentation I've ever seen. Does that help us? Or is that just feedback? And I think sometimes that we tend to, depending on the situation, lean towards one type of feedback or another and value that more. Just take it all in as you have value to share. And when you share it, you're going to get feedback. And then you just figure out how to learn from the feedback that you get.
All right, folks, if you're struggling with the whole idea of perspective, so if you're struggling with how to handle feedback, if you feel like you're in a recurring loop and you're not getting outside perspectives, Tom and I have something that we want to run by you. We're doing a webinar on December 5th. It's right around the corner. It's like a little over a month from now, so you can block it out on your calendar at 12 noon Eastern time. It's about sculpting a healthier business in 2024. And it could be business could be anything. It could be a nonprofit. It could be a for-profit. It could actually be your own personal life. Sculpting a healthier 2004. We want that. I'm sorry, 2024. 2004 is long in the past. If you can sculpt that still, you're really talented. At any rate, if you struggle with, you don't feel like people are giving you the perspectives you need to be successful, or you feel like people just tell you what you want to hear, I've been there, I know that. Or if you just want some outside perspectives and some strategies for how to find them and how to integrate them into what you're doing in powerful ways, that's what this workshop's going to be all about. Tom's going to do this webinar. Tom does amazing webinars. I'm so excited because I actually get to participate. I'll be in the front row of this Zoom event. Can't wait. Telling you, it'll be amazing. It's going to set you up. We're doing it in early December because we want you to have time to think through it and be ready to hit the ground running in 2024. So if that's something that interests you, and it ought to, reach out to Tom or me. You can direct message us. You can put something in the comments right here when you watch this and be like, hey, knuckleheads, I want to know more about your webinar. If you put the word knucklehead there, I promise I will reach out to you. But that's Bob. Just put the word knucklehead. I'll know exactly what you mean. All right, there you go. How's that, Tom?
Have you turned knucklehead into a word of affirmation?
So I have 2 cats now. One is knucklehead and the other is chucklehead. And I say it enough to them that they actually respond. Oh, and here they come. They have names, but that's a shorthand. And my thought is, what's the limiting belief for my cats in that I call them that? And then I realize cats don't know what I'm saying. They just go by tone, thankfully.
Are you sure about
that? Stephen jumps in with Knuckles Bamboozler, no sir. He likes bamboozle.
He likes bamboozle. It's all right. I like that.
All right.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us today, and Kelly and Stephen for your comments and your patience with us. Kelly, you're going to do very well in sharing your value on Saturday, and we want to hear how it goes Monday morning, which is when you will hear us next.
Yes.
Bob and I have made some tactical decisions around a strategy that we have. And so we will not be on the air tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., we will see you Monday, 7 a.m.-ish for our next episode of Today's Antidote.
Hey, Socks right here knows. He wants you to embrace the renegading you, right, Socks? Right? Oh, the tail's wagging. He's into it. It's so worth it. Socks knows it. Who's also, what's your other name? Chucklehead? Chucklehead knows. You should know too. Oh, and even you can hear him. He's ready to go. He's going to go embrace the renegade in him. Believe me, he does. In the trash can, in the toilet, you name it.
All right, everyone, go out and enjoy your day. We will see you soon.